I've lost control of my profession. I've lost control of the independence of my profession. The profession no longer has the independence and integrity it once had. I'm going to look for another line of work. And I think that's a very serious concern, and I'll tell you why, because it's already happening in Medicare and Medicaid. Right now, if you're a low income and you're dependent upon Medicaid, you have a hard time finding a doctor. And the problem is that kind of cancer, that economic cancer, could spread to the entire system.
I once had a wealthy friend in England 20 years ago, and when I visited him, if he got sick, he went to his doctor, a private doctor. Certainly they had socialized medicine in England 20 years ago. He lived in London in a flat on St. James's Square. He was a wealthy man. But he saw his own doctor. In other words, there was a government plan, and then there was a private practitioner plan. You don't think we're going to have that here?
If you look at the House and Senate bills, there's no independent insurance outside of federal control. I mean, you're going to have...
So you're saying it's even worse than the socialized medical system in England? Is that what I'm hearing? We're actually going to have a Cuban-style medical system where you go to a government-mandated doctor or nothing?
What you're going to have is you will have a system in which most Americans are going to get their coverage. Most Americans are going to get their coverage through government programs, whether it's a new government health plan, which is what the House and the Senate bills would both create, or Medicare or Medicaid. The Lewin Group, which is probably the top econometrics firm in the country, looked at the House bill, and they said under the incentives that are built into the House bill, that about 113.5 million Americans would be pushed out of their private health insurance into the government plan. So basically, most of health care will be delivered, through the government system. Now, there are, it's conceivable, that you would have doctors who would work on a cash-only basis. They would be subject still, however, to the extent to which, state regulation or federal regulation allows.
Why does Obama and his Chicago minions want a Soviet-style medical plan? That's what they're pushing here. Why are they so desirous of this? And I have the answer to it. It's not about providing medical care for the poor. It's to control people from the cradle to the grave. If they have your medical records and you have to go to them for everything that you need, not only do they know everything about you medically, but they can control you medically through your medication and through your medical care. This is worse than anybody can imagine, in my opinion.
In your opinion and in mine, the issue here has never been the cost of health care or the quality of health care or covering the uninsured. We can all do that. There are a lot of bills that have been introduced in the House and the Senate that can solve a lot of the problems of the current health care system. But frankly, I think you're right. This is not about cost and quality and access and improving the system. It's ultimately about power and control. I've thought about this, frankly, Mike, I've thought about this for years. I could never understand why somebody would want to get involved in such a very complex sector of the economy. Frankly, you'd think it was full of all kinds of, it's very complex, and you can really make serious mistakes. This is an area where the law of unintended consequences can go berserk if you do the wrong thing. But they want to do it. They want to do it. They want to expand government control over the financing and the delivery of healthcare system, of healthcare. And they do it in both the House and the Senate bills.
So in other words, it takes more power into fewer hands. And as I say, medical records will no longer be private. It will be anyone in the government system will be able to access it. And how come this privacy issue is not coming up in these debates? How come the issue of total power and control over people isn't coming up in any of the debates? Why are the Republicans dead on this issue?
Well, actually, to be honest, to be fair, I think the Republicans have actually in the Senate have been doing a good job. If you look at what Senator Enzi did recently this week, he offered a lot of amendments. They had over 300 amendments in the Senate bill. And the Republicans in the House don't have the same access because the rules in the House are very, very different. It's going to be what Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic leadership want. I think one of the reasons why they're going to try and move this thing so quickly is because I don't think they want people to actually read these bills.
No, they don't. The reason they're steamrolling this is because they know the more people look at it, the less they're going to want it. They're going to recognize that it's a government out of control with a few people controlling their lives. And so, therefore, nobody seems to be understanding what's at stake here but me and you and a few other people who understand that these dictators are going to get control of our lives from cradle to grave. Anybody could access your medical records, including your psychiatrist, your psychologist, or any such records, can control you. They can blackmail you. They can manipulate you. Don't people understand the dangers of this?
I don't think most Americans, when it comes to this issue, most Americans look at this in a very practical way. They're saying, in effect, look, health care costs are too high. Do something about it. The quality of care is not good everywhere. Fix that. Too many people are uninsured, and they're absolutely right. Do something about that. So the people are very, very pragmatic. And very, very reasonable about most of this stuff. The politicians, however, what they try to do is they feed people these bumper stickers like, low-cost drugs for all or health care that's always there. They feed them these bumper stickers. But behind the bumper stickers is the legislative language, and the legislative language is full of very, very detailed provisions, which mean that they are going to be able to exercise a very high degree of control over your personal life.
Dr. Moffat, you helped develop the Massachusetts Health Insurance Initiative in 2005 for Mitt Romney. Is that correct?
I contributed to the health insurance market reforms. That's a very big, complex bill, but the health insurance market reforms, yes.
So how does the Massachusetts health system compare to this one that Obama's trying to jam down everyone's throats?
Well, it's different. I mean, it's a state-based reform, and it was designed by Governor Romney to solve a very specific set of problems. Mainly, how do you get health insurance, or how do you maintain health insurance for employees in small businesses? And what we did is we created a new kind of market called a health insurance exchange, where if an employee wants to buy health insurance and they want to take advantage of the federal tax benefits of health insurance, they would buy through the exchange, which means because the exchange by law...
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm lost already, and it shows you how hard it is to follow any of this. And I don't mean to be rude. I just can't follow the rules here. I'm a fairly healthy guy because I've practiced self-control, vitaminology, etc. all my life. I've avoided certain foods. I don't smoke, etc. What about those who abuse themselves? Won't they be abusing the system as well?
Well, that's what's happening now, and that's what will happen if the taxpayers just basically pick up unlimited bills.
Does this system control for people who I call recreational medicine practitioners, who have nothing to do in their lives, older people who shop doctors, see 4 or 5 doctors a week or a day because there are no limits on how many they can see? Is there any control in it for those?
No. If you're talking about the Medicare program, no.
So, in other words, you got people gaming the system who are bored, and they know it's free. They'll go to a neurologist in the morning, a dermatologist in the late morning. They'll go to a hearing guy in the afternoon and an eye guy in the evening. And they'll do this 5 days a week because they get someone to pay attention to them. You're telling me the system is not going to control them? What about, are they going to pay? Is there any co-payment here? Don't they have to pay $5 a visit or something like that?
It's an entitlement. So, basically with an entitlement, people think that everything is free. So they basically...
So it's like a Cuban-style medical system, and everyone knows that the Cuban medical system is the worst in the world. So why would Obama and his minions be trying to push a failed medical system down our throats? Answer, because they're dictators. I know you're not going to say it, but I'm saying it. I am terrified of this administration. I've never seen anything like this happening so fast in my life. I'm losing the nation by the day.
This is going to be the biggest single debate that we're going to have this year. This is bigger than cap and trade.
But they're not letting us debate it. Obama and Rahm Emanuel and that other character from Chicago are trying to force it through by August. They're doing it because they know that if everyone looks at it, they're going to reject it. Can't the people speak out and stop this in some way?
The important thing is for the American people to get on the internet, read these bills, fool these guys, find out what it is they plan to do, and let them know how you think. We can't have another giant stimulus or cap and tax bill passed without members of Congress reading them. But we ourselves have a fundamental responsibility to protect our own liberty.
Yeah, but we have no representative government. This is not participatory democracy anymore. These people don't listen to us. They laugh at us. What's interesting to me, and I want to conclude with this and ask you your opinion, is I read this morning that when this bill hits the Senate, Senator Dick Durbin, one of the most liberal senators I've ever seen, a man who called our troops Nazis, who I detest them for that, he actually said that a surtax on the rich will not be passed in the Senate. Now, that's very interesting. Do you have any idea why he and the senators will oppose that?
I have no idea why Durbin is opposing it, because the surtax on the rich, you know, we've been hearing that the rich are not taxed enough. We've got to tax them even more, everybody over $250,000. The problem, Mike, is that right now, the top 20% of all your income earners already pay 86% of all the taxes. We have a very dangerous situation developing in this country where the bottom 50% of all your income earners don't pay any federal income tax.
Unbelievable. That's a figure that we never hear coming out of the media, do we? That the bottom 50% of income earners pay no federal income tax?
Bottom 50% of all income earners pay no federal income tax. This, as I say, it's a dangerous situation for a republic.